Welcome to Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash, sponsored by the UI Radio Network at uiradionetwork.org. Catch us on Facebook and Instagram at United Intentions and Twitter at Higher Intention. Look for us on 99.1 FM, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, and many more. Over the next hour, we'll introduce you to some fascinating people and engaging discussions that may provide you with answers to assist in revolutionizing your own personal health. And now, here's Dr. Nelson.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash, the host of Health Matters on the UI Media Network. For all those family members, friends, and followers who are following me right here in Atlanta, Georgia today on Talk 10 FM and WDJY FM 99.1, hello and welcome. It's such a pleasure to have you joining us right here in my hometown. And for those of you who are joining us now from Ohio and Kentucky, at WTTA 101.2 FM. It is such a pleasure to have you as well. Look forward to growing that part of the country, and I want to hear from you all. And for the rest of you who are either joining us on Binge TV networks or who are joining us on all the major social media platforms, it is also a pleasure to have you as well. And I want you to know that segment of my viewership is growing tremendously, and I'm very, very pleased to know that many of you are coming back and many of you are sharing my show. So before we get into the show, I want to mention a few things to you, and I have some incredible guests. You're going to love today's discussion. Can't wait to jump in, but let me share some things before we do. The first thing I want to mention, for those of you who haven't downloaded your smart app, if you can do it quickly, you're welcome to do it now. If you can't, you're going to have to wait till the end of the show. Simply go to www.uimedia app and download our show. And the reason you want to download our smart app is because we have an amazing array of great hosts, and they bring in some of the finest guests from this country and around the world. And within, I'm going to mention something here to my producer and director. What do you think? We're going to have 20 new people here in the next months to come, hosts?
I think so.
Yeah, they're shaking their head. Thank you, Jesse. So we are expanding tremendously. We're now seen in 90 countries around the world through Binge Networks TV. So not only are we doing radio, not only are we doing podcasts, but we are now also seen in 90 countries around the world. That is unbelievable. And we are changing lives with one interview and one conscious intent at a time. So thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, by the way, today, feel free to join us on Facebook Live. You can submit your questions through Facebook Live, or you're welcome to call at 678-495-4345. We'd love to hear from you, by the way. Always makes for a better show. And listen, we'd also love for you to connect with us online. If you want to get a hold of me specifically, you're welcome to contact me or follow me through Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you want to follow the United Intentions Foundation, you may also do so on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as United Intention, or on Twitter at Higher Intention. Now, we've been approached by some of you who are interested in sponsoring us. We would love to have new sponsors. We also love our additional sponsors, and I'll be talking about one in particular who is sponsoring our shows, our programs this month shortly. But if you're interested specifically in advertising, we're absolutely here to help you. And once again, you're welcome to call at 678-495-4345, and we will have one of our staff members talk to you about creating your own unique commercial. And I've seen some of them. They're pretty fantastic. So if you're ready to grow your business and take it to the next level, call us again at 678-495-4345 and let us help you by developing your own unique commercial. Hey, don't forget, I haven't mentioned this in a while, but it's very, very important. Please don't hesitate. We would love for you to visit us on www.unitedintentions.org. This way you can keep up with our dates, our events, our programs, and our hosting possibilities. That's where we put it all out on the internet. So join us there. Now, I mentioned this. I'm going to mention it again. We are also on Binge Networks TV. If you want to catch us there, you have friends around the world who'd like to catch our shows, just look us up on www.bingenetwork.tv. And you can find us under UI TV. We're under channel 12783. 12783. We're also featured on Apple TV, Google Play, that is, Roku, and Amazon Fire, to name a few. All right, let's get this show started. Before we actually begin the interview, I want to say a few things. And I want to create a context for my wonderful guests, and I'll introduce them in a moment. We're at an interesting position. There's a lot of division, if you will, in the world. So we have people who are looking for less division, more collaboration, more unity, more of a coming together, more of a spiritual bent. We want to create communities. We want to make people important. We want to bring people together to create possibility in the world. And then you have those that are kind of focused on separation. This is my political party. This is my ideological party. So I decided today that I was going to have two fascinating guests, two people I love very much. They're very well known on social media. Sophie Nubani, the queen of wisdom and laughter, and Bob Choate, Dr. Bob Choate, Bob, who is amazing and is considered the grand master of transformation. So I brought both of them together because I love that Sophie has a real bent towards spirituality, and Bob does as well. But Bob is also very, very linear, and he has found a way to wonderfully and uniquely bridge linearity and spirituality. So I'm so happy you two are both here, and I want to create a context to speak from while I ask you two questions, okay? So first of all, welcome. It's such a pleasure to have both of you here. I'm looking at your smiling faces, and I'm so happy because I love you both so much, and because I respect you so much. Thank you. So it's interesting because I'm a person who pays attention. Bob, I don't know if you even know this about me, but I was attending the University of Michigan, and I was going to get into an accelerated PhD program many years ago and get a PhD in clinical psych. And I decided kind of last minute not to. I had a very bad injury that changed my life tremendously. I fell down a flight of stairs during an ice storm, broke my back, and the only thing that really got me better was chiropractic. So I felt like I needed to begin by devoting my life to the pursuit of chiropractic. And of course, I've done that now for over 27 years, among other things. And I pay a lot of attention to the workings of the world as such. And I've noticed that there seems to be such a division at this time by some people, not all, not you two, not me. I'm all about collaboration. That's why I have you here on the show. That's why I do the show. Bringing together of like minds, if you will, and speaking about things that help create possibility for the world through our discussions. And as I paid attention from the time I was a child, I remember being a little boy sitting on my porch in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when they were having terrible racial riots in the city in the 1960s. And I remember it was horrible and it was terrifying. And it still sort of terrifies me even to check into this day, because my mother and father said, we've got to be off the porch. We've got to be in the house by 7 o'clock, or there is the threat of being arrested. They don't want anybody out because the tensions between the races were so high. And I remember being a little kid, and I thought, well, I don't understand that. Why would it matter what color your skin is? You know, why would it matter what your political ideology was? And I thought there has to be a way that we can bring people together in a way that creates a sense of self-importance by the people who are in the community, people who are followers, whether it be, you know, that we're followers in a workplace or followers to create change in the world. There has to be a way that we can foster this out of a commitment of love and transformation and inspiration, a coming together of people where people are recognized as unique and distinct and are heralded for the opportunities that they individually bring to the table to help life be better, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the household, whether it's in the community. And I noticed growing up in Flint, Michigan, years later, that there was a great deal of difficulty among the people. You had the people who in Flint who were highly educated, who worked at the automobile industry, in the automobile industry. You had the people who were professors at the University of Michigan branch in Flint. And then you had a lot of military. Flint drew a lot of people because there were a lot of poor people in Flint, and so many of them were recruited. High recruitment in Flint for military personnel. So you had these three very, very distinct bodies, and I think you both know that I worked security, if you will, in some of the real big nightclubs in Flint, like the Micah-Tam and the Light, and I watched these three clash. And so I always thought there's got to be a better way than this. And so I have focused for many, many years on the notion of living from a place of spirituality and living from a place of me being a leader in the community, in my practice, and a leader as in my family as well. And even in the community with people that I don't know in everyday interactions, being somebody who brings possibility to the table, if you will, right? So we have opportunity instead of separation. And so I wanted to talk to you two today about taking on a new model of leadership and a new model of being, that being a spiritually driven model of living and of leading. How's that sound?
Yes,
You in on that?
absolutely.
Okay, super.
Absolutely.
So, Bob, I'm going to begin with you. Let's
Mhm.
talk about the notion of spirituality briefly and what is it? Because it's one of those terms that's thrown around so much in our community. What does spirituality mean to you when somebody says, I'm a spiritual person? And Bob, as you express whatever that is for you, and then Sophie, I'll let you certainly add to that. Is being spiritual the same as being religious?
Yeah, so a lot of people make the false assumption that spirituality and religion are one and the same. While there's a relationship
Right?
there, certainly there is. Yet spirituality in of itself comes from within and not from without. It's all the way down to the soul level. In a sense, when we talk about spirituality, when somebody is spiritual or in spirit, they're also inspired at the soul level to be able to do so much more, to be able to get out there and really just make a difference for other people. So it starts from within. Yes, it's expressed from
Externally.
without.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And that person who is able to express him or herself that way certainly will take the mantle of a leader if they have a vision that's attached to that expression. And if you think about it, going back to the early 60s, when then President John F. Kennedy wanted to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade.
Right.
Yes, and he inspired a nation to do that. No other nation was even focused on going to the moon in that short a time. And the technology really just wasn't there. But because he inspired and and brought the nation together and an absolute focus and a vision and a mission, he was able to get people moving towards creating new technology. So we see integrated circuitry being created at that
Right.
time, shrinking stuff down, new computers coming up, people coming together from all sectors. And I remember when my father, he was a rocket scientist and engineer with the U.S. Army, and he was brought in as part of that and brought in his knowledge from Nike missiles.
Right.
So the very first rocket that went up in space, and that was actually part of the going up. So we had the Mercury 7 that they went up, and the very first one was a Mercury Redstone. So the Redstone rocket was actually an ICBM rocket bottom,
Wow.
but they needed something to launch Alan Shepard out into space. Even though it was a very short time, he only spent a minute out there.
Right.
Still, that was just a start. So they used the technology that they had, but they rapidly improved the technology, and I believe had not had that not happened, we wouldn't be as far advanced in computer technology as we are now because of that initial thing with the space program. But
Right.
all this other stuff came out of it. Yet we were able to land a man on the moon. I know there's people out there so that never happened, but I
Right.
know that it happened.
Right.
And
Well, that's
and
interesting. So Bob, it's interesting to me because we brought so many people together through an inspired leader, and I think
yes,
that's one of the things that I use, one of the criterion that helps to separate us from the traditional non-spiritually driven model of leadership. So we've got to take a
yes.
commercial break, and Sophie, I want to ask then. I want to ask you if you have any other things you'd like to add to that. Okay. Folks, you're listening to Health Matters. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
With all of life's stressors, it can be challenging to stay balanced and healthy. Hemp-derived cannabinoid, or CBD supplements such as Plus CBD oil, are becoming well recognized as a key supplement to optimize wellness. By working directly with our own internal system that maintains homeostasis, the endocannabinoid system, CBD, can help restore the body's natural rhythm when we need it the most. Learn more about Plus CBD oil and how to balance the system that balances you from www.pluscbdoil.com. That's www.pluscbdoil.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash, and you're listening to Health Matters. My guests, Dr. Bob Choate and Sophie Nubani. Sophie, I'd like to ask you, would you like to add anything? We were talking about the nature of spirituality and it being the same or different than religion.
Yes, I would definitely agree with what Bob shared about, and literally when we meditate, and when you're in religion, it's like you're learning about God or seeking source. And when you are in the spirit,
Right.
yes, it's like going from within, and it's like God talking to you because it is being inspired. And inspired action is always a lot more sustainable, and it just charges you in much ways for performance and being able to be more grounded than if you were just following
Right.
directions or so. Just like when we're born and the breath in our body announces us as a newborn to the world, because we are in this flesh, in the body with spirit. Without a spirit, we are announced, or we are expired. We might as well
Right.
say
Right.
we are dead. So, can an organization or a household or anything function without being in spirit?
I would say not.
So, literally, spirituality is something that by nature fuels all our living and moving and actions. So, when we are connected from within, we project so different to the outer world.
Right.
And what you mentioned earlier about separation versus collaboration, or competition versus support and connection, and exactly what you're doing on your show, a person who comes from that kind of vision contributes, shares, and gives from a different vibration and higher consciousness, because now it's becoming the we in alliance and support to the betterment of all.
Love it. So I think one of the things I'm hearing is that spirituality deals more with a direct connection to source, with where religion is bound by the specific constructs of whatever the religion is. And your focus of God comes from what you're told God is and what your relationship to God is.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's talk about what characteristics some of our top spiritual leaders have. Bob, what would you say are some of the greater characteristics that somebody who's really spiritually oriented and gifted as a leader would provide his followers with?
Yeah, I think one of the things you just said it right there, within characteristics is character, and having good character, I think is very, very important. If a person has good character coming from their heart, will they be able to truly inspire others? And that part, if a person does not have that, they're going to do it out of either ego or
Right.
selfish reasons, things like that. But when they go within themselves from their soul self and they're connected, like Sophie said, and like you said, to the source, and being able to focus on others, in a sense, serving. So character and service, and we've heard a lot about servant leadership.
Yes.
uh, and I have a book by Robert Greenleaf where he talks specifically about that. So I think having good character and one being of service to others, not forcing others, but that person actually serving them, serving the people that they lead. So I think
Yeah.
those two are the start.
I love that, Bob, because what we're looking at now is not lording a title over somebody. I'm the
Mhm.
CEO, I'm the CFO, I'm the sergeant, but saying, look, we're a team. I'm here to guide you, but I am one of you, and I'm going to do everything I can to direct through inspiration your unique qualities in a way that enhances them. So the product that we produce, whatever that is, whether it's your kids in a family, parents in a family, whether it happens to be in a church, whether it happens to be in the workplace, is that you have inspired outcomes. And I think
Mhm.
these inspired outcomes are always going to be, Sophie, as you said, much more effective, much more substantial, because people feel that you're making them special. They feel like you're bringing a sense of community to whoever are being followed. And I think one of the big issues currently, as I started to study this topic, is that we have such mobility in the world now. For example, I have a son who lives in Tennessee. I have a daughter and a future son-in-law who live in Missouri, and so they're not living near us anymore, right? So we don't live out of villages or smaller communities or smaller cities. And the challenge with that is that often it means that people we spend the most time with are going to be the people we work with, right? And so it people have a need to feel that sense of community. And if it's not inspired through a spiritually directed model of leadership, you lose that. And I think if you lose that, there's a big missing in one's life. There isn't a sense of community. There's a sense of competition. There's a sense of I'm a cog in a wheel. Sophie, what would you like to add to that?
Yes, spirituality in action, a person is more aware. And
Right?
when we are more growing in awareness, we are more spontaneous. So when we have to make a speedy decisions and life or death moments, when we are already in that mind and that action, being more aware and mindful as a soul, okay, we are able to produce much better results when needed.
Right?
We have more respect, and which really is very important, because when you are around different cultures in an organization, corporation, or neighborhood, when you're able to respect diversity, you're allowing to create much healthier culture in that setup. And with that, we also become, we have more, I would say, our vision
Right?
and our led action is more responsible, and it creates vocation.
Love that.
And yes, and I know that Bob, you talked about the Ikigai before, Ikigai, and
Ikigai.
yes, you mentioned that, and I was always, I remember loving that concept in that form of vocation. And when we are all mindful and able to operate and function from such basis, we are able to face adversity
Love it.
and in much more, I would say, reliable ways and respectful ways, creative ways. We grow from it
Sophie,
versus.
that's wonderful. I love that. Forgive me for interrupting. You said something that really touched my heart, and that is we live in a time still where, goodness, there's so many of these large corporations that do things like the coal mining industry, for example. They take their runoff and they're allowed currently to put it into the streams where they're located, which, of course, as we all know, coal has mercury. And once you liberate the refuse from that industry into the tributaries, they're destroyed for an unknown period of time. What I see, for example, and I apologize, I don't know the gentleman's name. He may even be here in Atlanta. He was one of the top leaders in the carpet industry, and he became a spiritually driven leader. And he went to town and recreated the industry so they stopped polluting in the manner that they were, because evidently the carpet industry is a big polluter in the world. And he said, we're going to do this better than anybody has. And they were interviewing people who worked under him, and they said, we love him. He has a vision. He's protecting our future. He's protecting the future of our kids by, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember his name, but I was so inspired by hearing him talk, because it wasn't just about making lots of money. You know, the funny thing is, we all know, when I refer to all, I mean the three of us, that if you do a really good job, usually money follows. Right? You know, it's not an issue. If you do a great job, if you take great care of people, it usually just takes care of itself. It certainly has in my practice. I don't focus on money. I focus on taking incredible care of the people, and the people just keep showing up one after another, and I have a very, very likable, viable business. And so, Sophie, I love that you brought that point.
I would like to just
Please.
mention something to piggyback on what you just mentioned. So when we're facing adversity and see that things are challenging, when you are out of a spiritual base in action,
Yes.
then you're able to reframe. And reframing is really something a lot of spiritual leaders are able to apply when facing adversity.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I just, when you mentioned that, how people bounce back when they find a challenge or something that's going on like that, how they bounce back and how they within tap and become thinking on a higher level.
Sophie, it's so funny. You just took my next question that I was going to ask you, which is, Sophie, I was going to say, hey, Sophie, the next question is, how do you think people handle getting stuck, whether it be professionally, whether it be in their families, whether it be in the workplace, given this type of leadership, this type of perspective that we're talking about, meaning that you have somebody who is either spiritual or becoming more spiritually minded, and they're under the influence, if you will, or the guidance of spiritual leaders. And you just took it right out of my mouth, so to speak, meaning there's, you have resources, you have community, and you're considered important in that community, which is very, very important, because why do you think we had unions develop? We had unions develop because the employees weren't important. And we had to develop unions to protect the employees. Now, what's interesting, and I'd like you to comment on my remark here, is that I don't think you necessarily have to have unions if you have people who begin to follow more of a spiritual line of thinking and are led by real effective spiritual leaders, because there's no competition. There's no, you're not important. There is only the notion of treating a person as important, as relevant, and as whole. And if you do that and you address their concerns and you help them transform, you help them involve, you keep them inspired, what is the need to have, another group in to create separation or division? Because that's really often what happens with unions these days.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Absolutely. One of the things that I know that Sophie knows about me, because I'm also a systems thinker, and I think spirituality is greatly connected to that.
Right.
And the reason I say that is that when we have unions and we have management, the corporations, there's a disconnect. There's
Yes.
no interconnection. There's no relationship. But when a person thinks at a higher level, going to the meta level, they're able to look at everything and what they do as a leader, how it will affect my employees,
Right.
or the people that follow me. How do my actions or what I do affect them? And in turn, they're going to be affected. They're going to go back to the family. So their family's going to be affected. Their community is going to be affected as a whole. And eventually it's going to come right back to my organization and it's going to affect it. So it's
Right.
a whole systems thing that's happening. Yet the spiritual leader
Bob, I hate to do
They're
this.
able to go to that
Bob,
level.
forgive me. I'm getting the cue that we must break for a commercial. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Folks, you're listening to me. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash, and the show is Health Matters. We'll be right back. Sorry.
Are you ready to be the hero of your own story? It's time to put the power of your health back into your hands. Join us for our free 25-day journey to get your life back now from chronic illness. Our doctors and experts will guide you back to optimal health.
I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I'm not a scientist. I'm a 16-year survivor. I was given 3 months to live in 2001. I had cancer in the breast, the lymph, the brain, and the lung. And I was told I might live 5 months if I did the double mastectomy, the chemo, and the radiation. And so it became a very basic question to me: is if I've only got 3 months, how do I want to live, and how do I want to die? And I decided I didn't want to live or die with surgery, chemo, and radiation. So I decided I'd just stay as healthy as I could and as long as I could and live vibrantly. And I decided I was going to go with the girls. So a comment about the girls and the boy. These are very personal decisions, and again, the decision I made, I felt like it was really just the easiest decision. I just didn't want to go through the surgery. So call me selfish, but the girls are still here. I'm still here. 16 years later. So how can my tools help you? Well, I'm a survivor of 3 death sentences and 3 other chronic diseases.
Go to www.getyourlifebacknow.live and begin your journey today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. You're listening to Health Matters. My guest, Dr. Bob Choate and Sophie Nubani. Before we continue, Bob, I interrupted you. I'm so sorry. I want to give thanks to our sponsor. This show is being brought to you by Plus CBD Oil. Discover the benefits of Plus CBD Oil, America's #1 choice for CBD products. You can find out more by looking them up at pluscbdoil.com. Bob, I'm going to get a spray or two of this CBD oil while you continue. My apologies for interrupting you.
There you go.
Ah.
Perfect. Yeah, so going back to what I was saying is that everything that we do will affect everything else. And once we look at that, like when you mentioned about the carpet and how the carpet affects the environment, or how coal mines affect the environment, people who are not thinking at that higher level, and spiritual leaders do,
Right.
So that the leader who's not spiritual, who's typically driven by his title and everything like that, is stuck in that box.
Yeah.
Is stuck in that box, that label. But yet when you get outside that and you get into your soul level, expressing it out, then you can see, how does my decision affect this, and this, and this? And how does this affect everything else around? So if I'm able to look
Right.
at it from that level, everything I do is going to be a wiser decision. And that wiser decision is going to allow everything else to be expressed out. And because I'm a spiritual and wise leader,
Right.
so will my followers become the same.
Exactly.
Because I'm going to start to developing spiritual and wise leaders as well.
Right. Beautiful. I love that. What a great point. Bob, it's so interesting. So often when I'm going to do a show, I'll have something or someone present something to me that is perfectly in alignment with the next show I'm going to do. And today it was an article by Medical News Today. And they released an article that indicated that people who live lives that help take better care of the people around them live better lives. They don't get sick as often. They have less mood instability issues. They're happier and healthier people. I thought that was so perfect given the conversation that we're having today.
Yes.
Well, if you think about it, because Sophie mentioned about vocation and that being part of Ikigai. And Ikigai is a concept that actually started in Okinawa. And we know that the people of Okinawa are the longest living people in the world.
Yeah.
They live with a sense of purpose and community and helping those around them. And Ikigai is actually 4 concepts that's rolled into that sense of purpose, sense of meaning of getting up. And that being, again, vocation. A vocation is what we're good at and what the world needs. And the
Right.
other 3 is there's passion, meaning, and profession, and
Love it.
all those coming together is ikigai. And
Beautiful.
It's a
yeah,
beautiful concept.
yeah. So once we're able to find that, especially as leaders, and we pass that on, then I believe that the world will become a better place.
No question. And I love that we're all part of that. I want to share
Mhm.
something interesting with you. And I believe that I read this in the book Outliers, if I'm not mistaken. There was an Italian group, and they were known for their stonework out of Italy. And they decided collectively, many of them, to move to the United States. And they set up in a number of different places, one of which was somewhere in New York, not in New York City, but outside of New York City. And they noticed that these people became one of the longest lived people in this country. And they also lived up to 20 years longer than the people who had come from the same area in Italy. And so it became a very interesting point of inquiry. And do you know what the number one thing was that separated them when they did great studies on these people, because it made no sense. It wasn't logical that a group coming from the same area in the world set up in multiple cities in the United States, and one group lived an average of approximately 20 years longer than the rest. Take a guess what the number one consideration was.
Being in service.
Very good point. You're right, Sophie. You're right. Bob, what do you have to say? And I'll tell you how you're right, Sophie. You're going to love this. Bob, you want to guess? You have
Is
any
that
thought?
having a sense of purpose and community?
Bingo, you're both right. So here's what they found. They found that by being in service to each other, by making sure that no one was ever left out, that everyone lived better. They had a sense of self-importance. They had a sense of community. They had a sense of, this is who I am in the framework of this community. And once again, I want to say this, they lived, as I recall, approximately 20 years longer. No one in the community was left out. They all used service to take care of each other. If there was something wrong and somebody couldn't, people in that community made sure they ate well, made sure they were part of all the different events in the community. And so this notion, and this is one of the reasons I love this so much, the spiritually driven model allows everyone to benefit because the focus is on transformation, inspiration, community, and betterment.
Mm-hmm.
And back to basic on that is when people feel safe. That is one of the number one reasons what people start acting out of character is
Yes,
fear.
beautiful. Absolutely, Sophie.
And when you mentioned that they work together in service and that nobody is left out, if every person, listen, I will share this story because I had a client that actually bought for me a package when I was doing a presentation for vacation ownership.
Right.
She was a lady and she was older lady. And as we opened up while paperwork was getting ready, I knew that she had an only child, and she was talking to me about she's going to do about her ownership. I asked her where she will travel, stuff like that. At one point, she teared when I asked her, when you're retired, and probably you and your son would go, and she teared, and I was asking her why.
Right.
And she told me that, Sophie, I have an only child, but my son hardly ever calls me.
Oh.
And I'm so scared that when I am older, that I will be in a nursing
Right,
home by
right.
myself because she's a widow. And she was scared of that uncertainty of the future and a lot of the things that she could never really know. If this happens, who's going to be around, the sense of
Sure.
community.
Absolutely.
So what you just mentioned, imagine now we are in our vibrant age and doing things,
Yes.
and we could be that till the last day of our lives. But at realistic general numbers,
Yes.
most people,
Or not.
as they age, they are going to be more sensitive. That's why they become more like children. You see that the
Yes.
children are taking
Yes.
care of the parents, and they're the ones who's organizing their appointments or their outings or this or that. So by nature we go back to, back to where we need to be nurtured, and the times where we're giving service, and that knowing that everybody is contributing
Right.
and everybody's together, and that togetherness creates that connection and bonding, and that love and care truly allows that sense of feeling safe
Yeah.
and allowing you to really not have the worry and the stress that others will encounter at much earlier ages.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, Sophie. It's so funny. Many of us, certainly me included, take that for granted. I speak to my mother, who is at a very interesting time in life. I had a difficult conversation today, and not because she was difficult, but my mother is slowly dying of very, very advanced cancer. And
Oh,
yep, she's led an amazing life. Her stories about living as a Jewish woman in Nazi Germany and avoiding the Americans, the English, and the Nazis are just heart wrenching. And it was interesting because I come from a family that was taught we communicate. We talk about anything and everything that is in the space or needs to be in the space to talk about. And my sister, my mom, and I were all together this afternoon, and we had the heartbreaking discussion of my mom saying she wanted to talk about what everybody wanted when she died, the things that she owned. And it was so very difficult. But the reason I bring this up, Sophie, is because she always made it, knowing that growing up in Nazi Germany was so fearful. I mean, she told stories about how they'd hear the
yes.
bomb sirens go off and they'd turn off all the lights, and you never knew if in 30 seconds, 2 minutes, they were going to drop a bomb on you and you were going to be wiped out. And
Wow.
she tells stories about how she was in a building and those sirens went off, and 2 minutes later the earth shook so violently it was as if she was in an earthquake. She said she'll never forget how the earth rumbled when these, can you imagine, a squadron of B-52 bombers unloading all their sorties over a city. My mom said they'd go out the next morning terrified, still shaking, and as far as they could see in one direction, everything was rubble. As far as they could see in the other direction, there could be a quarter-mile swath, as long as they could see, of
Wow.
buildings and homes that were destroyed. And then they spent weeks clearing the rubble to bury their dead. And so your point of, let's create safety as leaders, whether it be of ourselves or as members that are leading in the workplace or our community, let's create safety, because that is something that we can never take for granted. Not feeling safe, whether you're an elderly person, a child, or anybody in a family or a workspace, is so critical to make sure that everybody thrives, not
Yeah.
survives. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I remember uh, on my side of my mom's side, because you talk about like that, because I'm half Japanese,
Right.
and in a Japanese culture, and this was the thing that my mom, when she came to the United States, she had a rude awakening compared to what she had over there in Japan,
Goodness. Yes.
is that families were really, really important. Community was really, really important. And in the Asian culture, one really, it's not about the individual within there, but it's about how we're all part of this whole community, and
Right.
how we support and grow with each other in terms of that. And even today, because I know that in neuroscience they looked at that, most Western psychology, or most psychologists developed through the Western mind,
Yes.
but there was no research done with the Eastern mind. And when they finally discovered that, they asked a young boy from Texas and then a boy
Bob,
from
I'm so sorry. I'm
oh
doing it to you
oh
again.
got it
My
got it.
apologies. We'll pick that up, I promise you, in 1 second. We've got to take a commercial break. Folks, I'm Dr. Nelson
Got it.
Bulmesh. You're listening to Health Matters. We'll pick it up as soon as we get back, Bob. So,
Download the UI Media Smart app at uimediaapp.com to watch and listen to all your favorite shows anytime from anywhere in the world. Shows that enrich, entertain, educate, and feeds the conscious cells throughout your body. We bring you never heard before topics in health, inspiration, music, psychics, numerology, current affairs, controversies, and much, much more. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.uimediaapp.com and start raising your frequency now.
This is Tim.
And Maria from UI Media Network.
We both know what it's like to own your own business and needing to grow.
Building brand awareness, maximizing your visibility in the community, and reaching new customers is essential in keeping the doors open.
So in the spirit of 2019, we want to offer you a very special price at 50% off for commercial of your own.
So please call now and get on the calendar to get your commercial going for the new year.
So call UI Media Network at 678-495-4345. That's 678-495-4345.
hello again. I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmesh. Thanks for joining us this evening. You're listening to Health Matters, and my guests are Dr. Bob Choate and Sophie Nubani. Bob, I'm so sorry I've interrupted you twice here, and I'm going to have to keep us tight because I have a lot more I want to ask of you two, and we have less than 15 minutes. Please continue, Bob, if you remember where I cut you off.
Yes. So when they examined the boy from Texas and a boy from Japan, I believe they were teenagers, when they asked the boy from Texas to think of his mother, one part of his brain would fire off.
Right.
And it was unrelated directly to his mother. When they asked the boy from Japan to do the same thing, the same area where he thought about himself and thought about his mother were right in the same group, where the boy from Texas, two different areas, himself and his mother.
Right.
Completely separate. And the reason I tell that story is that not the differences between Eastern and Western, but there's a connection I think we all have to make, going back around to the spirituality part, to the soul self. When we can unleash our soul self, when we start connecting to other people,
Right.
we will all come together like yin and yang coming together.
Yes.
Like this. And like I'll be connected to Sophie and to you and everything, but thinking like the singular part all together instead of this
separation. Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Excellent, Bob.
Yes.
Very, very, very interesting point. I love that. Beautiful. I want to ask you two this. You're both amazing leaders. What are some of the major, maybe I shouldn't use the word strategy, but strategy or techniques that you use to help focus people, to guide people, to bring people into a more spiritual model or path of being and of leadership? Bob, you want to lead?
Sure. When I see people who call themselves leaders and others, or people that I even guide and that I coach, I want people to step outside their ego. So if they're so ingrained within an ego, I tell them to now step outside. I'll use NLP techniques if necessary to be able to get them to do that.
Right.
And then being able to look at the world as a whole. A lot of times I'll take them through a guided meditation where I help them to rise to the higher level, to like looking at the earth as a whole, And at that point, when they're really at the edge of space,
Right.
to look down upon the whole earth, and everything that they do will affect across the globe,
Wow.
because you can see it at that level, instead of being down where you're at and you're stuck with all your
Yes.
issues and everything like that.
Right.
When you're able to get outside and you look at that, okay, my decision, what I do, I may not think of myself as a leader, but the truth is, what I say, what I do right now will affect all the way across the globe. It will have
Mm,
that ripple effect.
beautiful. Bob, I love that you're the one who said that. You know why? Because your father was a rocket scientist. And what you just said, and maybe you're drawing from this, is what many of the astronauts said. I remember hearing a number of the astronauts interviewed, and they said it made me tear up when I looked from my capsule to the Earth, and I saw how incredibly whole and beautiful it was. I realized that we were all part of that experience. So I'm so happy that you used that. It's so appreciative. Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Sophie, talk to me.
Yes, I believe that when we lead by a good example of what we're teaching, it really has this amazing influence that you have indirectly. And I am a firm believer of always going back to nature and laws of creation to learn anything that I need more depth of insight
Beautiful.
of.
Beautiful.
And even when we talked about safety just before, you got to understand, if a community, if a nation is only working to survive because they're scared, because they're not feeling secure financially, or maybe even as a country because of war, you're not allowing them to tap into their creative juices and truly become their best selves.
Right. Right.
So a spiritual leader is able to empower, encourage, and truly allow people to step into their own power,
Yes.
basically guiding them to connect with their highest self and their best self.
Beautiful. Absolutely
And
beautiful.
that's, yes, that's how I truly try to lead in my practice when I am connecting with others.
Not a question why you two are so successful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I know you both love the question that I'm going to ask you next. I've got a lot of ground I want to cover in about the next 7 minutes. If you could take about a minute or so apiece. Bob, let me lead off with you. Any favorite quotes that would help embody what we're talking about today? Meaning, do you have a special quote that really either touches you from a spiritual perspective or from a leadership perspective?
Instead of a quote, I'm going to use like the thing that General Eisenhower during World War II,
Right?
when he was approached by a young lieutenant, and when the second lieutenant asked him about leadership, what's his meaning of leadership, and Eisenhower came back and said, "Okay, I want you to hold this string at the end," and he says most leaders do this: push, push, push. The string goes nowhere, but the leader that leads, so follow this. So he pulled it like this, and this is what the leader does. The leader leads from the front
Beautiful.
and is able to guide. And and that's one of my favorite quotes and stories of all time, and regarding that area
Leadership.
of
Yeah, beautiful, Bob.
leadership. Yeah.
Sophie, please, your thoughts.
Mine, truly, I have my own personal, but I really love be the change you want to see in the world, because whatever you go through and growth that you encounter in the journey of evolving to higher consciousness and truly lead by your good example, those changes, if we are expecting others to
Yes.
do it for us, we will never be responsible, feel accountable to take action and lead by that good example. So if I want to feel more love, I want to give, and I want to be that love that I want to receive. So if I want to see more compassion, I want to be that compassionate soul, that compassionate heart, that compassionate leader.
Right.
I'm talking about compassion. The CEO of Linskin, and this is to separate religion totally, but he adopted the compassionate leader out of the Buddhism, school of mind, and literally added that as a style of operation
Right.
for them. And when we are in spirit and guided from within, we are able to practice much, much more compassionately in our leading when we do so. So
Beautiful.
I really like that because it has a lot of other effects in many areas on a deeper level.
I'm going to share a quote with you two both. I love it very much. And I think I may have shared it on your show when you interviewed me. And that is that all things exist as a courtesy for all other things. I do everything I can to live from that quote. All things exist as a courtesy for all other things. I was out quickly with my daughter, and there was a young man serving me. And I could get a sense that he didn't have a lot of confidence. And so one of the things I thought that I would do, my daughter's extremely beautiful, and I thought that he might be getting a little nervous. Yes, thank you, Sophie. Bob, you know as well, firsthand.
Yes.
And I thought that this gentleman maybe was a little intimidated, a little shy, and so I started calling him sir. And my daughter looked at me after he left the table, and said, "Dad, why are you calling him sir? He's younger than you, and I don't understand." And I said, "Honey, I live my life as often as possible from the notion that we all exist as a courtesy for all other things and certainly all other people." And this young man doesn't appear to be having a day that has him completely on target. I want to respect him so that he feels validated. And I'm going to guess that his manner in which he serves us improves, as does his day.
Yes.
And she looked at me and she said, "That's interesting. Let's see if it does." And of course it did. He became a better server, but much more importantly, we felt much more connected to him, and I could tell that he felt much better about himself. And I think if we live out of that, life and the world gets better. I've got about 45 seconds for each of you. Whoop, I'm told, let's do 30 seconds. Final thoughts, Bob. Final thoughts about today. Anything you want to share?
My final thoughts, and I want to go back to spiritual leadership. I would say UI Media, Tim Ray, and you are all part of that spiritual leadership that we all want to embrace. And I want to thank you for having us on, all of you spiritual leaders.
Such a pleasure. Sophia, you have about 20 seconds. What would you like to share with us? Final thoughts.
I would definitely second that. And I would just say, when we are all in service, our missions might be different, but our intentions are of love and light. We all rise to higher consciousness, and we're able to create and make this world a better place.
Excellent.
So
thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Bob. I've got to end the show. I hope you'll stay on for just a second. Folks, I'm Dr. Nelson Bulmash. I'm signing off. I will be back April 16th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please return, share my show. Join me in 2 weeks at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of Health Matters with Dr. Nelson Bulmash, where we help you discover how to ignite your mind, body, and spirit connection. Join us next time when we will bring you more exciting guests and engaging topics. Meanwhile, feed your mind, exercise your body, and nurture your spirit. The United Intentions Foundation and its associates take no responsibility for the opinions and statements made by the talk show hosts or their guests. With all of life's stressors, it can be challenging to stay balanced and healthy. Hemp-derived cannabidiol, or CBD supplements such as Plus CBD oil, are becoming well recognized as a key supplement to optimize wellness. By working directly with our own internal system that maintains homeostasis, the endocannabinoid system, CBD, can help restore the body's natural rhythm when we need it the most. Learn more about Plus CBD oil and how to balance the system that balances you from www.pluscbdoil.com. That's www.pluscbdoil.com.